Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters Encounters video. While I'm continuing to do your suggestions for this playlist, I thought I would mix this one in here because it has to do with a familiar topic that I just talked about the other week. This apparently involves yet another strange, bizarre, and creepy encounter with a not deer. It's by pure coincidence. When I was looking at this information on the reddit.com website, they're from the subreddit Unexplained. The title caught me, like it was the hook essentially, and then when I was reading the info on it, I realized this was yet another not deer encounter. So eventually I am going to do a new video, like another cryptid one, but this one officially talking about the not deer. But until then, let's go ahead and let's share this creepy encounter. It comes from a user by the name of Location Atlas. The title is "My boyfriend saw something he can't explain and neither can I." So let's go ahead and let's share this entry here, see why essentially this phenomenon, these encounters with not deers, are growing more and more out there. So here's what they state. This story isn't a joke. Trust me, I thought it was at first too. My boyfriend, 18 male, saw something he can't explain. It was New Year's Eve and he was driving home after our date night, so it was around 1 a.m. I was laying in bed scrolling on my phone when I got a call from him. I didn't think anything of it, assuming he was calling because he was bored on his drive home or something. I answered kind of half asleep when he told me he just saw something terrifying and he didn't know what to do. He said, "Listen, I know this sounds insane and I can't tell anyone else because no one will believe me, but I'm scared. Something you should know about my boyfriend is that he does not get scared often. He's rational, he views everything with statistics and science. He doesn't believe in the paranormal. I thought he was just effing with me, that he was trying to scare me or something. I told him to explain what happened. He said, I was driving down the interstate and I saw this deer, but it wasn't a deer. It was effing huge. At first I thought it was just a really big deer, but as I got closer, I realized that deer don't get that big. Elk don't even get that big. It was at this point that I realized that he was telling the truth. His voice was shaking and he was talking frantically. I've never heard him that scared before, and he continued. He said, it was hunched over. It looked like a man, a really big effing man, but it had deer antlers and fur all over it. I thought I was tweaking until I looked into my rearview mirror after I drove past it, and it was still there, and other cars were swerving away from it. Now that night he didn't sleep. He kept a loaded gun by his head and watched the security cameras around his house all night. Last night we were talking about it again. As he was talking, his eyes were darting around. He would check behind us every 30 seconds or so. He gave me a better description of it. It stood about 8 feet tall. It looked like a man hunched over with his hands on the ground. It had a human face and massive deer antlers. Standing upright, it probably would have been 12 feet tall. It was covered in fur and stood deer-like. It was standing on the side of the interstate just watching the cars go by. Now here is where the blank gets wild. His house is about a mile from the interstate with some woods separating them. He's explored these woods before. He was telling me about a bridge in the woods that he's explored before, and it shouldn't technically be there. Every bridge in the state of Kentucky is registered with a serial number. This one wasn't. He described it like it looked brand new. There was no rust, the stone and metal were pristine, and there was no graffiti. Under the bridge, there was a tunnel. This tunnel would logically be a drainage tunnel, but it was always bone dry. He doesn't know how long it is, but he knows it's at least 2 miles long. He said it had been a couple of years since he's been there, and he doesn't want to go back. He thinks about that thing he saw, and he thinks it's from there. He said bridges are supposed to be registered, but it isn't in the Kentucky registry. Everything about this bridge is just wrong, and something about it reminded him of that thing he saw on the interstate. He told me there's only been one other experience in his life that was like this one. It was right when he turned 17 and he was out alone hunting in the woods. If you've never been hunting before, you can see the woods wake up around you. As the sun rises, the birds wake up, the squirrels come out and then run around, and the deer come out for dinner since they're nocturnal. He told me this time, though, nothing was there. The birds weren't chirping, there was nothing in sight. The leaves were still. There was no wind. Everything was dead silent except the sound of his own breath. Now it was around noon and he decided something was off and left to go home. He told me he didn't think much of it then, but now it genuinely scares him to think about that day. Has anyone ever seen anything like this before? I don't know if it was a Wendigo or someone pulling a prank, but I know I've never heard my boyfriend sound like that before. I believe him. I believe there was something there that night that is unexplainable, and I need someone to confirm that we aren't crazy. I need some sort of explanation. Edit. I'm starting to believe what he saw was a not deer. We talked about it and I was telling him what a not deer was and he said that could be it. Thank you to everyone in the comments for telling me your theories and please continue to do so. Second edit. For those saying it could have been a person pulling a prank or a person in a costume, it was 28 degrees outside at 1 a.m. Final edit, important edit. At the moment, I am not able to go out to the bridge. The weather is dangerous enough as it is, and I'm dealing with a lot in my personal life that is making it difficult to get out of the house at all. At some point, I will check the bridge out. Sadly, it won't be as soon as you all hope for, and I'm sorry. Then that's it. That's everything from the user location atlas. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. Isn't this just a picture perfect example of a quote unquote not deer? It's going to make me even more interested eventually in doing an official video on this topic, but at least here we get to see this encounter. So apparently this user saw this deer, which was a not deer or something else different. And as they described it, it was really effing huge. This was a person, according to the user, that stated they don't normally get scared. They view everything in terms of statistics and science. They don't believe in the paranormal. But this definitely scared them. And the way he described it as stating, besides it being really huge, that it was 8 feet tall, looking like a man hunched over, hands on the ground, human face, massive deer antlers, and if it stood upright, it would have been 12 feet tall, completely covered in fur. Creepy stuff. The fact that there was other cars there as well was an interesting bit of trivia, because there, not only was he the only witness, but there were other people, and on top of that, he stated that that the cars were swerving. So the people absolutely saw, the rest of the traffic saw this not deer, and they wanted to get out of it, and there this thing was just looking at them. And as he stated, whenever he passed by and it looked through the rearview mirror, this thing, whatever it was essentially just watching the cars go by. Creepy stuff. And then he linked to that previous experience being out there on an early morning hunt, eventually when the sun rising and then seeing all the animals come out, or at least that was expected. And then no, all of a sudden everything was dead silent, just completely silent, as if there was something unnatural there, and it was his cue to get out of there. That's definitely something that I would have done as well. Has anyone else had this type of encounter too, when it comes to being out there somewhere in a forest or wilderness and then everything just suddenly stopping, just being dead silent, and then you wondering what is going on? If so, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Is this a not deer too? All the other comments associated with this user's post point to that too, and I tend to believe it as well. The user mentioned that it could be a Wendigo. Hard to tell, but at least everything again seems to point to this being a not deer. But let me know. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.